Imagine getting $100,000 worth of value for free. That's what you're going to get right here in this video, because last month I hosted a private mastermind that you could only attend as a part of my Fund to Freedom program. And as a part of the speech that I gave that day, I broke down how I've been able to build a $100,000 per month business from scratch. So that's what you're going to get in this video. Everything from that day that I broke down, from my approach to building this business from zero, the strategies that I've used, the decisions that I've made, and how you can do the exact same thing, but with even less mistakes. Use this video to get started in your business. Enjoy.
So let's talk about lead generation strategy. At the highest level, when we're talking about lead generation, we are simply talking about finding people who need money, right? And the really cool thing about what we do, the opportunity that I think a lot of people get lost in when they get too into the weeds, is that every single person in real estate and or business needs money every single day. Every single person. So that's good. That's a great starting point, right? So we have the top of our funnel. We know that everybody needs money. So when we're talking about lead gen, Tasso and I had a good conversation a little bit about this yesterday. One of the biggest issues that I find people having is that they think too small. And so I want to help you guys think a little bit bigger with your lead generation. So if we're talking about a funnel, right? And we're talking about getting things into the top of this thing so that you can make money down here, right? That's our goal. Well, if we're doing one-to-one outreach, which everybody has heard me talk about this, I'm never going to say it's a terrible thing, but I just want to talk about it fundamentally. If we're doing one-to-one outreach, then it's one person here, one person here, one person here. And let's say it takes 1,000 people up here to get down to here, right? Then that is fundamentally the slowest possible way to do that, right? Now, somebody brought up KPIs, which is interesting, because KPIs, there are things that have KPIs and there are things that don't have KPIs. I would say I am of the belief that there is no true KPIs in this business for success. I think that there are some things that can be measured. Mason, do you have any KPIs you could give me for your stuff? Like high level, how many outreaches before somebody responds, how many outreaches before somebody submits? It's okay if you don't.
I don't have anything like run on data, like specific systems to do it, but like based off my experience of sending out a lot of messages, I would say probably 500 or 600 sent out to get one from just cold outreach. And that's from like building a relationship of not just like sending them a message and then they submit. It's like they respond, build a relationship, and then it turns into a submittal.
And that's to get a deal submitted.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. So the reason why I don't focus on KPIs with this business is that when you think about a KPI, key performance indicator, by the way. So if we're talking about our key performance indicators, if we're talking about the things that are gonna matter, Mason could go reach out to 600 people and it would take him, if he did, I don't know, 50 or 100 a day, maybe it would take him a week, right? But if I took 6 days out of that week just observing and doing my research on title companies or investors or whoever it might be, and I narrowed it down on this one specific person that was the perfect partner that fits in, could not be a better fit, and then on the 7th day I just reach out to that person, then is a KPI the thing that's going to determine my success? Probably not, right? It's a lot less of a spray and pray mentality. The other thing with lead generation that gets missed, and this is where I am heavily moving towards, is if we separate, I'll throw left and right here. So if we separate solo people, right? This would be a wholesaler. So I talk all the time with you guys about the wholesale hamster wheel, right? Every deal that a wholesaler completes gets them no closer, in theory. They just restart that same wheel around again. And so if you work with a wholesaler, you don't have to go on that hamster wheel, but you're still a part of it, right? Their hamster wheel becomes your back-end hamster wheel. At least you don't have to deal with all the negatives. So that's a wholesaler, right? The next up would be something like a buyer. A buyer is going to restart every time. However, a buyer is buying deals, not finding the deals, right? So that's one level up. A lot of the high-level, consistent people I work with are buyers. But these are individual people. Now let's think a little bit bigger on the scheme of lead generation, right? One of the craziest things that we've broken into recently with lead generation is who are the people that see all of the deals or a lot more of them, right? One of those would be transaction coordinators. They see every deal that comes through. Title companies. They see every deal that comes through. It could be things like realtors. Another big one that I don't think barely anyone in here takes advantage of is, I don't know a better word for this, but gurus. People that have people bringing deals to them or that are seeing a lot of deals. Every one deal that a wholesaler does, a TC does 50. It's the same one person, right? But they're not doing, you don't care about 99% of what a wholesaler does, right? They negotiate a contract, go back and forth, change the price, deal with liens. Nobody cares, right? All you care about is just the very end when they need money from you. That's it. Well, in that same amount of time, what about somebody like a TC who's not dealing with the contract negotiating and all that things, and they're just doing this one small part? They still are getting a piece of the pie, so they're still involved in the deal. So they can still get access to that thing that you want, but at a much larger scale. Same thing with title companies. Now, we're not getting into how to pitch these people, right? Because I know I've talked to you guys about just spraying and praying on title companies. But title companies see a ton of deals, factually, right? It can be one person. They can still see 50, 100 times the amount. Same thing with a realtor. Same thing with gurus or leaders, community leaders, whatever you want to call that involvement, right? And so if we're looking at strategy between these two sides, is there a right answer? No. Is there a higher leverage answer? Absolutely. You have 10, 50, 100 times the leverage over here. Now, I'm going to compare this to the same thing I talk about with cold or manual outreach versus social media. If you do cold outreach, there is people in this room and plenty of other people who have done a cold outreach, connected with somebody, and got paid 2 days later, right? It can be very fast. So that's awesome. Whereas social media, you're probably going to suck for the foreseeable future. You might get some deals out of it, but you're not really focused on lead generation. You're focused on learning, right? Long-term, short-term. It's the same thing here, right? This would be more of the manual outreach. This is people that are actively doing things. This is more of trying to form relationships, trying to solve their problems, trying to get in, trying to prove your credibility to these people. And so the same short and long-term effects that I have seen with manual outreach versus something like social media is the same effects that you'll see here. Now, on this side, the other thing, which can technically be any of these people or it can be somebody else that is dramatically missed. I never know how to spell this word. That could be wrong. But referrals. Is it 2 R's? Yeah? Nice. You know what word I can't spell? Separate. I spell it wrong every time. And then it autocorrects. It's perfect. Okay, referrals. This is probably, I might find something else that I feel more passionate about, but this might be the thing I feel the most passionate is being missed by the majority of people here. And it doesn't mean you're not trying. It just means that you're not fully getting it. Referrals are insane. Has anybody, raise your hand if you saw that video of the conversation I had with Alex Hermosi about this business. It was on my YouTube. I think I posted in the group. So go back and watch that video if you haven't. I was just talking to you guys, the clerks, about this. One of the coolest things that Alex Hermosi does not give a crap about our business and knows nothing about it, and yet he can give me better advice than almost anybody else about the business. And the reason, going back to business IQ that we have on here, is that business is the same thing, and humans just tend to decide that they want to complicate it, right? Oh, I'm in transactional funding, not wholesaling, not buying apartments, not buying single family. It's all the same thing. It's literally all the same thing. You find somebody that wants to pay for your stuff, you convince them to do so, you make money, right? You provide them value, they pay you in return. The more value you provide, the more they pay. Business, right? So in that discussion with Alex Hermosi, it was literally 10 minutes. I gave him a high-level overview of what we do, and basically he spent the rest of the time talking about referrals. He said, all right, well, if you can only go find 5 deals a month, why don't you just go find 500 more people to bring you 5 deals a month? And then you can make $10 million a month, right? Most people in here, we're thinking about how can I make $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month. He just went straight to the top because he thinks bigger. But that's because that works. And if you can get referrals, bringing things in, you now take yourself, as those of you guys who say, oh, I'm at my W-2 job. I have kids. I'm busy. I want to maybe go on a vacation once in a while. You don't do it necessarily or only by working harder. You do it by getting other people to work harder for you, right? And if we can do that, and I know you guys have heard me say this, if you can start by identifying and recognizing how incredibly important referrals are, and then you can follow that up. This is one of my favorite activities. I think every single one of you guys can do this. Whenever you tend to think like, oh, somebody's in a different situation than I am, their business is different than mine is, which we know is not true. Just step back one level and think about your perception of whatever that thing is, or your experience with that thing. So if you guys are thinking about referrals, how do I set up referrals? How can I make people do referrals? Step back one step and think about the fact that almost every single one of you guys refers deals to me every day. You have a perfect, I shouldn't say perfect, it's not a perfect example, but you have an example, right? Why do you do that? Because my goal for you guys is to make it illogical for you not to bring deals to me, right? The smaller deals, I pay you 100% of the profit. Chelsea deals with all of the hard stuff. I give you all of the capital. It would make no sense for you to go do it with somebody else. You would make less money and it would be harder, right? Take that concept and put it with whatever you want to connect this to. Literally anything. If somebody's gonna make more money than they would have made or do less work than they would have done, and you make it so obvious, right? Like if I did 25% payouts to you guys, everybody would probably still think it was worth it, but what if I just doubled it and just split it? Now it's like, oh, well, why would I ever want to work with somebody else? If you can create that with even a few people and they truly believe that, then you're set. It's just solving that problem in a way that makes it, like I like to say, so illogical for you to go work with somebody else, and then they'll have no reason to, right? Now there's a lot that goes into referrals, a lot, right? Off the top of my head, when I'm talking about referrals, one of the biggest things is being able to explain to other people or show other people, enter social media, what you actually do, right? So if you go tell your mom and her 3 best friends that you do this real estate thing and they should bring you deals, they might bring you deals, but they'll be crap, right? But if you can get referrals of higher level people, so the difference between telling your mom and telling a TC, right? Telling a realtor, telling a title company, people that obviously have a little bit more of an idea of what you're talking about. That's step 1, is identifying those people. Step 2, right below that, would be not only identifying them, but then being able to explain what it is you're looking for in great detail. And if they bring you something you're not, being able to accurately identify why it doesn't fit. So if I just told you guys, bring me any EMD deal, you brought me an EMD deal and then I reject it, what the heck, right? But if I can say, well, I don't accept anything below $5,000 and you bring me something that's $4,000, there's a very easy explanation, right? I said it had to be 5, this is 4, I won't fund it. Clean cut. And the harder you can stick to that, the more people will begin to understand and be able to bring those things to you, right? So I want to start with that, because if we can take this number here and make it rain, right? And also disconnect, this is huge, disconnect this number from your effort. If your effort is a 1-to-1 correlation to the deals that come in, then you will either have to 10x your effort to 10x your leads or admit that you'll never get there. But if one thing can go 100x your output elsewhere while you do the same thing, that is how you scale. That is how you grow. That is how you get the volume, where now when a deal comes in, you don't freak out and it's like, oh my gosh, a deal came in, this is my one break, right? You want so many deals coming in that the crappy ones you don't even have to think about. And if you can get to that point, it's obviously easier said than done, but we tend to overcomplicate the fact that it basically just comes down to systemization, right? If you find 5 referrals that bring you on average 10 deals a month or 10 leads a month, then you have now 5, 10, 50x your income. Or not your income necessarily, but your input. And if we can fill this up, then we can start to pick and choose more. We can start to make better decisions. We can start to make decisions based on what's actually good for you and not necessarily just what gives you more hope, which we never want to do. And all that stuff works better. So that's what I'll start with lead generation strategy. Those of you that brought it up, and also anybody else that has anything, you want to just hit me with more questions or ideas or thoughts around that?
Well, so we're all going about trying to find referrals from the very similar groups, right? And like
Great question, or great thought.
You're trying to fill a funnel with all the same people.
Yeah.
Instead of taking a sideways look.
Yeah. So Tassa and I talked about this last night too. Everybody's swimming in the same ocean, right? I talk about it all the time. Same lake, there you go. I talk about it, and this is another thing that I could get very passionate about. If we look at, let's say, just because I have this up here, let's say that this funnel is every real estate investor in America, which, I don't know, 50% of America maybe is buying houses, apartment buildings, has a crap ton of money, is doing something in the real estate realm, right? So I don't even know, what number is that? Like, how many people are in America? 500 million or something? 100? Okay, so we'll say like 100 million people, right? So if this represents 100 million people, and the groups that you guys are a part of have 10,000, that's where everybody's spending their time. Everybody. And then what do we get? Oh, I got this deal sent in, but they also sent it in to 3 other people in the same place. And oh, they posted a deal on Facebook, but I was the 5th person to respond. It's literally the same 10,000 people, guys. It's this small. And this, I don't think this is an exaggeration. Like, it's actually this small. The amount of people that don't even know what transactional funding is, the amount of people that aren't involved, when you get involved in a circle, naturally you tend to think like this is the only people in the world that exist that do this thing. And you have to step back a little bit and understand, you know, the people that I do this stuff with are just not connected to that world. You guys know how much easier that is? It's insane. There's no competition. They're like, I don't even know anybody that does this, and you do a million of them. I see you posting about it all the time. This makes so much sense, right? But it's uncomfortable, right? Obviously, you know, as far as our comfortability and joy, we'd rather probably just hang out with the people in this room and talk about stuff all day and whatever. It sucks way more to go to some random meetup with people that might be like, oh, that sounds stupid. I don't need EMD funded or whatever it might be, right? Those are the people you want to talk to, because then you can start solving real problems instead of creating problems. Or even worse, not only do people all hang out in the same pond, but they all just start fishing in the same pond, and they're like fishing for each other. I've made this analogy before, and it's very legitimate. A lot of the circles you guys are in is like, if Paul just keeps going to Kenny asking if Kenny needs a deal funded, and Kenny's like, bro, I do the same thing. That's what everybody does. Like, actually, it's just the same, it's like the same 2 people going back and forth all the time. And then what happens? A year goes by, 2 years goes by, you get burnt out, and you're like, there's no deals.
Can we just step aside?
Yep.
So another thing I saw as a problem is, what are we actually offering people besides keeping funding?
Another great one. That, I'll try and repeat everybody's questions. So Doug's saying, what do we actually offer people besides just funding their deal, right? AKA, how do we set ourselves apart? And part of that answer is that you determine how you set yourselves apart based on the skill sets that you have or the skills that you can develop. I'll give you one. I can give Jamie one. I can give everyone one. I won't go around all the way. But Doug, you understand systems. You understand websites. You understand things like that. That's very involved in business. It's very easy, very simple, I won't say easy, to integrate that into something, right? Hey, I saw that you're doing deals. I would love to work with you. Also, I'll just revamp your website for free, or whatever it might be, right? Or add this in. Or I saw that your systems did this, and you know, I've tried that before, and actually if you do it this way, it's way better. Something along those lines. I'll give an example of how I've done that in just a second. Jamie, super easy. Hey, saw your stuff. Your social media sucks, but say it in a nice way. One easy step you can do is if you just download CapCut. You can throw your thing into CapCut, make a really nice video. Here's an example of how I do it. Here's a loom, send it over to you. If you need more help, like I'm happy to help. I won't charge you, you know, whatever. It's a skill set that he has, right? What I like to do is I don't do a one size fits all. I try to be very diagnostic while still trying to do things that I obviously have capability and credibility to do. There is a guy, Garrett. You guys have probably seen me post about him or talk about it sometime. Garrett and I have closed, I think, 20-something deals so far this year. So in 4 months, so about 5 a month so far. And he is scaling up the amount he's doing. And he's great. And we make a lot of money together. So every time he increases the amount of deals he's doing, or anytime I see something, and I did this early on. So when I first met him, and this is something I had the ability to do. Not a lot of you guys could really do this, or you'd have to set it up. But when I met him, he was just starting to scale. And I was like, dude, I've got this CRM, Deal Sync. I'll give you an account for free. I'll set all of your stuff up in there. I will integrate it with my stuff. That way you don't have to worry about that stuff. It'll be taken care of. No stress on your end, right? That cost me $0 to do because I own Deal Sync, right? So I can do that. So I gave him that stuff, plugged him in. Now logically, he doesn't really have any reason to go to somebody else, because not only is everybody else going to charge him the same amount, but probably be slower. And obviously now we've built up the credibility and proof and all of that stuff too, which helps. But I've also given him all the systems and everything. So it wouldn't make any sense. I had this easy value that I could give him. These TCs that I met with last week, I'm not doing the CRM thing with them because they don't need a CRM, but it's kind of the same thing. They're starting to scale. I saw stuff that I've been through before. I said, hey, if we just do this, if we clean up your intake form like this, if you change this question, it'll allow more people to get pushed out of your funnel so that you don't have to take as many calls. They're like, oh, that's so helpful. We've been struggling with, taking all of these calls with people that aren't legitimate. And I'm like, yeah, trust me, I get it. I've been in that same position, right? So just finding the ways that I can solve small problems for people like that is the way that I try and get in the door. That's always what I've done, is just look and observe and don't ask, right? It's just like with anybody. Nobody wants you to ask them what the problem is. They just want you to solve it. And so if you can identify those things for somebody, instead of assuming things, right? It's the opposite. It's the opposite of when you reach out to somebody and just say, I have money, take my money. Do you want me to? And they're like, I use $5 for my EMD. What are you talking about? Like, you're weird. Why are you bothering me? Yeah, it makes no sense, right? Because you're not solving their problem. But if they're a human being that runs a business, they have a bottleneck. That's how business works. Business is bottlenecks. That's the whole point. You may not be able to solve their bottleneck. Another one, which we'll talk about more with seller carries, because it's another thing that I'm going to work a lot more on, and I want you guys' input on this today later. But somebody needs a title company. You send them a good title company. Somebody needs a transactional funder. This would be third-party story, but somebody needs a transactional funder. They send that person to me. I fund their deal in 2 seconds. They make all their money. Now, that person has just gotten a ton of credibility. So like, that was the best referral ever, right? Anybody ever referred you like a CPA or something that sucked? They kind of lose some credibility. It's like, what the heck? But if it's an amazing person, then it works out really well. And so by stacking those things on top of each other and saying, oh yeah, this title company is amazing. This lender will crush it, right? Hopefully we can start getting to the point where we can get you guys hooked up with good DSCR lenders for the seller carries and things like that. All of those details. Another one that we're gonna try and add in is these TCs for people that are like, how do you structure these deals? How do you deal with the contracts, right? There's 2 avenues that you can take. There's the, I'm not very good at that thing either, but I really wanna work with this person and help them. So I'm gonna take a bunch of time to try and figure out, how do I structure a seller carry on a contract, right? And maybe figure it out. Or here's a novel idea. Go find an expert, point them to the expert. You'll get just as much credibility. You don't waste any of your time and they actually get the problem solved, right? And then who's that person gonna come back to? Especially because you're providing value to them. You can also provide value to the TC. TC gets paid, they get their problem solved. They don't really care about spending money if they actually make a bunch of money. So everybody's happy. You elevate yourself in so doing. So it's basically an objective of solving problems in a personal way, a proprietary way, I guess, in a sense.
Let me ask you a question on the TC front. Everybody always tries to take fee to give the TC something. You doing that, or are you doing a reversal where they say referral fee, they refer to you, or you guys swap on business?
With the TCs that I'm talking about, so the TCs just get paid directly. So they would get paid by the people that are using them.
But a lot of people want, right, this business, the daisy chains, the referral, the trade stuff. So when you're working with them, are you saying, hey, I'll send you this for a referral fee, you send me some on your that
with the TCs?
Yeah.
So so this is a very new development with these guys, but I pay those TCs for giving me deals, and then they pay me for sending them people that need to use their services.
Okay.
Yeah. It basically will just cancel out, but it's
trading.
Yes. Yeah. It's the thought that counts, at least.
I'm just wondering, when those TCs send you deals and the deal closes, and and that same person does repeat deals with you now, are you continuing to pay referrals to your TCs or the people that bring them in? Do they get a cut every time?
Yeah.
So for endless deals with that one wholesaler that they brought in?
Yeah, everybody in here gets referrals for life if you bring somebody in. So it's the same thing. They usually are TCing the deal, so it makes a lot more sense because they're actually still doing the work. But yeah.
So I would like to learn how to put that into DealSync, so I know, I don't have to remember, like, how do I know that this person is connected with that person and that they get paid when this comes through for that? So when you have a like when one of us refers a deal in, if that same person keeps bringing deals, you're saying we get paid on it every time. So I wanted, how do you set that up so that it pops up and you know I need to pay so-and-so because this referral came in through the person they referred to me?
That's not what I got from referrals either. What I got from is you bring me a referral, that's the whole point, that one lead gen, and then from then on you bring me another referral. So that's the whole point of the lead gen, not getting paid.
So there's a lot of different ways that you guys can set up referrals, right? The way I do referrals, again, I try to be aggressive with it, so I pay people out on every deal forever.
At 50%.
Yeah. But you don't have to do that. So there's referrals can be flat fee. So there's flat fee. There's one-time percentage. And then there's every time percentage. I know I'm writing sideways. So there's flat fee, one time, and every time percentages. I pay you guys on an every time percentage. People like these TCs that I'm starting to work with, I pay them every time flat fee percentage, because the way I look at it, although it's not technically quite one-to-one, is that I like to pay people percentages if they're doing a percentage of the work. I pay people flat fee if they're not, right? So if you, technically, it would make more sense if you guys all made a flat fee if it was a recurring thing, but it's a different case for Fund of Freedom. But if I was working with somebody outside of Fund of Freedom like these TCs, it's a flat fee because if they bring me $1,000 deal or $1 million deal, they're not doing anything different, right? So I would compensate accordingly. What you were saying is more of like a tagging thing, and Roz can touch on that in a call or something, but that's just when somebody comes in basically tagging them and keeping track of where they came from, right? Yeah.
So even if we never talk to that person again that we brought in, that we give to you, we're gonna get 50% of whatever they ever come back to you for.
Mm-hmm. I paid a guy that brought me a deal 18 months ago that I haven't spoken to in a year on a deal a couple weeks ago.
But they also are going through your white label again. You've given them your
You
white
guys,
label.
yeah, you guys would usually be going
So
through the
They
website.
wouldn't maybe they would find that fund by site, but they would go back through, so you would know anyway, so.
But also the referrals that you guys, everything that's set up through the white label and the payments and all that, that is specific for Fund of Freedom. Like we were talking about that last night. He was like, what if somebody tries to go around my website and goes straight to your website and tries to refer you deals there? I don't accept referrals from people that aren't in this room / aren't in Fund of Freedom. You can't refer me deals. So if somebody submits a deal to Chelsea that's not on the contract and they're not in Fund of Freedom, it's rejected. And they then have to go through you guys. That's the whole point. Because you guys are trained, you have a website, you can do some of the front end work, and also you should get paid for being a part of Fund of Freedom versus somebody that's like, oh, I just have this random deal, I just want to use Ryan's money, right? That's part of the perk. So that's also separated.
So I have a couple questions here. One is, can you give us an example of how those 3 tiers work when it comes to referral? Like, that's very general, I get it, but I want to see real numbers.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, remember that yesterday I was talking to you about that guy that had a conversation from Charlotte on Wednesday, that he doesn't do EMDs, and he only do up to $1 million for double close.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to him about the lead agreement that I have, but didn't give him percentage or flat fee or anything. Now that I just hear you speaking about that, I think I will go 50% with that of the transactional lender, because it seems like a lot of deals, he's not processing a lot of these deals for like EMDs, and there's a huge opportunity, huge upside there. But I want to know, like, how will you go by the numbers on flat fee, flat time percentage, and every time percentage?
Yep. So we've got a deal that we're funding, we'll say a double close for $250,000. All right, we're funding this deal. You brought this as a referral. If you are, oh, I should put the profit. So the profit on that would be, I picked a painful number. What is that, four grand, 3750? I think it's 3750. So 3750 profit. Wow, I really picked a terrible number here. So Fund of Freedom would get 50% of the profit. I split the profit with the capital partner. I split the profit with you guys. So we'll just, I'm not gonna hate myself anymore. I'm just gonna go close enough. So actually, no, I always pay you guys a minimum of $1,000. So that's perfect. So that would be what you got paid anyway. Okay, so Fund of Freedom, you would make $1,000, AKA 50% of the profit, right? So this would be 50% ongoing Fund of Freedom. Let's say instead this deal came from the TC that brought it to me, right? So I'll just use TC and we'll call this one time. Actually, no, we'll call this flat fee.
Whether it closes or not, right?
Not whether it closes or not, still out of the profit. Still out of the profit, because bringing me potential means nothing to me. It could be garbage. So TC brings me the deal closes, I pay them $250 flat. These are just numbers. It could be 500, it could be whatever you want it to be. I pay them $250 flat. This would be, the realm I would put this in would be like a TC, a realtor, somebody like that. Somebody that would be kind of like dishing the assist, right? It's like, oh, this thing came in, throw it to Tasso, right? Get paid $250, sick, didn't do anything.
So I ran into referrals where they can't legally take referrals.
You can always pay referrals. It's just a matter of what they can or can't do through their structure. So, I mean, a human being can get paid out.
Right. Well, it's like they're lenders or something like that.
Yeah, so you could pay them outside of their brokerage or whatever it may be. I know I say this all the time, but I'm not an attorney, so check with one. But yeah, you can pay people for services. It just may not be through their direct brokerage. The only thing that would then govern that is if they work somewhere where they are specifically prohibited from making any money in real estate outside of that, and that's kind of their problem. That would be a conversation that you could have with them. There you go. Like I said, there's always a way. So this is TCs, realtors, anybody that's just doing the dish. If you wanted to do a one-time percentage, then you could set it up in the same way, like a percentage. But the problem with doing a one-time percentage is that if you guys wouldn't bring me a deal the first time if you weren't going to get paid the second time, right? It wouldn't make any sense. You'd be like, well, I don't, because in your minds, and I've heard people say this that don't understand how we do this, they're like, well, I don't want to just give that lead to you because I did all the work. And now if I give it to you and I don't get paid anymore, then I'm going to try and figure out how to do it by myself. So that's actually the opposite of making it illogical not to work with me. That would make it very logical not to work with me, right? It would make sense for you not to do that. So I've never paid a one-time flat fee on something. The only time I could see that being done would be a case-by-case basis on somebody outside of Fund of Freedom that's trying to dish stuff. So if I don't do this, but if I did pay referral fees to people outside of Fund of Freedom and they brought me a deal with somebody, well, I'm not training you. I have no obligation to you whatsoever. If that person comes back to me, I'm not going to do the work of trying to track you down outside of the system and pay you on something that you did nothing if they came directly to me. In my mind, whether this is valid or not, I would describe that as I did the work to get the deal done, and then they came back to me. If you didn't want them to come back to me, then you should have kept the relationship. That's how I look at it. So, does that make sense? The split?
Kind of like, let's say like, for example, like I get the part where like this guy, right, like he's passing out all these EMD deals. And what I'm thinking is the every time percentage, which will be, let's make a round number of 10 millions. I pick numbers, that's easy for my math. So 10 million is 3%, which is the number that I gave you yesterday.
Yep.
300,000.
Yep.
You, the capital partner, keep 200,000. You and me split up 100,000. Out of that 100,000, I keep 50. You keep 50, and I split it on my 50 with the guy who just gave me that.
Yeah. And the way easier way of explaining that to somebody is I will never make more money than you do on a deal. We will always make the same amount. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is why I do it the way I do.
And that's the every time percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you guys know, right, that even if you, you almost, this is going to sound kind of weird, but you almost want them to feel indebted to you. Like, well, I only did 5% of the work, and then I saw you working on this thing for a month to get this thing closed. But no matter what happens,
it's looking like I just made the same amount of money, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I owe him
And you
more.
want people to feel like that, right? This is kind of off topic, but when you sell a business, from what I've learned, never sold a business. When you sell a business, you want to sell it underpriced. That's how that's set up. And the reason it's set up that way is because if they didn't feel like they were getting a good deal, they wouldn't do it. Right. That's the whole point, is giving people a good deal. And so if you can make that such a good deal, now on my end, right, you guys might be like, oh, he gives too much money or whatever it may be, but guess what? The deals keep piling in, right? So I do get a good deal. We make more money, more deals come in, our business grows as a result. So everybody wins. You may not win as much on the front end, which is why I always tell you guys, like, when you guys have a small EMD deal in, you guys get all the profit. I don't pay myself. Why? Because we have it systematized. It doesn't really make that big of a difference. And what I care about is that person comes back 100 more times, right? That's what I care about. Because that can increase the revenue, that can increase your profit, that can do all that stuff.
So I'm just wondering, when you are the lender though, that changes the amount that comes back to you. So you're differentiating total amount of capital profited different from, because you have capital partners and they get the 50% split. So when you're actually funding that deal, are you giving your referrals, like, part of that too?
The capital partner gets the 50%. So that's not me. That's whoever's money I'm using.
But you're lending some of your capital sometimes?
Not on any deals with you guys. That's all capital partners.
Okay, but when you have somebody else come in as a referral, from your, okay, I guess that's separate then, because you're doing everything through us.
I fund
So
a few things myself that are with people that only I work with, but not on
So how do you,
partnerships.
like for us though, how would you recommend that? Because when I have people coming in and they're like, well, wait, why is it only this much when you're charging 40%?
Yeah, because they make the same amount you do. So you would say, this is the breakdown. Half of it goes to a capital partner, half of it goes with my partner.
What if I'm funding it though? If I'm funding it, then how do I?
Then you could break it down however you deem fit. So you could pay them 50% of what you make total, or you could break apart your job. One of your jobs is having money. One of your jobs is facilitating the deals. Sarah 1 and Sarah 2. They're splitting money with Sarah 1. Sarah 2 funded the deal. They have no part of that. They didn't raise that capital. They don't have that money. So that's up to you.
Well, and it's just hard because when you have people coming in and you've got it, like when they come in and I'm going through the white label, their percentage is a lot different than when they come in through directly to me. And so I'm struggling with how to articulate that and how to, so they're feeling like they're getting compensated the same for everything? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, one easy thing is that if you're just telling them that they're making the same amount of money as you,
Right, I
then
like
that
That's great.
lessens the complication a lot. But if you go through the white label and have us do all of the work versus you doing all the work, that would be the difference. So you could also choose to pay them more than you make if you wanted. You could choose to pay them, 100% of your profit if you
I like what you said because it simplifies it.
Yeah.
Where there's Sarah 1 and Sarah 2, that's the
I
exact
like
same thing as the white label.
Yeah,
So they'll never see a difference.
correct. That's why very early on, some of you guys might remember, I didn't have it structured that way. The reason, and I changed it very quickly, probably within the first month of starting to do deals with you guys, because I used to split it just 50-50 hardcore without a capital payout. But without the capital partner, I was legitimately not making any money. I was giving half away, half to you, right? Obviously not logical. But the other reason why I changed that was to give you guys, in theory, when I was starting it was more theory, but to give you guys a very clear structure. So you can follow the same structure. Again, this is the whole step back and look at the fact that we already do all of the stuff that we're talking about here. You can follow the same structure. You don't have to. And I didn't have anybody show me this structure, so I'm not saying that it's necessarily right, but we have done it a lot, so we know it works at least. And you can follow that same structure, and then you can become the capital partner. Your parents can be the capital partner. Your friends can be, whatever it might be. And you don't have to change. Like, what if I funded some deals and didn't fund others with you guys? And when I funded them, I paid you 50% of the total, but when I didn't fund them, I paid you 25%. When all of a sudden you guys are getting blindsided, right? oh, we just make half of what we're supposed to make because Ryan ran out of money, that's not my problem, right? But if you split it up, then you don't have to worry about it.
But I don't understand that when it's going through the white label, because there's still the split, like you have your capital partner, but then you split that with us, and then we split it again, so they're still getting significantly less if a referral's coming through on the white label.
They get less, yeah, because you do a lot less work. So if you wanted to do all of the work, then you could have them go through your
But it's
website.
still that articulation, so going back to, I will never make more on a deal than you, is the logo.
But the way I kind of was explaining and marketing that to somebody was, hey, but here's the good news. As we scale our business and we have more things in place, you know, where we can do it in-house, then our referral partner's profit goes up.
Yeah.
Because our profit goes up. They're still making the same as us, but we're all making more because instead of paying you half, we're splitting that whole half.
Yep, the more money you make, the more money they make.
Right.
It's always 1-to-1.
And that, if you explain it that way, it's like, oh, okay, so it's good now and it's just gonna get better in the future.
Yeah, plus another really easy thing is when somebody wants to complain about getting a small piece of the pie instead of getting nothing. They're welcome to get nothing if they'd like, but I'm pretty sure they'd like to do the deal, learn how it works, get trained by somebody who knows what they're doing, not have to worry about the capital, and still get paid, and then grow from there.
Right, I've got a referral that, the deal was just submitted recently. He does lending, he does hard money, private money, all kinds of lending. He wanted to send me all his EMDs because he hates them, doesn't wanna deal with them. So we put it through, the seller wouldn't sign the mutual agreement, the mutual release. He wanted to see the contract. I sent it to him, but then I was just thinking about, should I be sending that? Should I be saying, well, when we do a deal, you'll see it? Because I felt like will be a regular, lead source wanting to do it, but then I was like, wait, did I just compromise what, because we don't all have the contracts except when we go through your system, so. should I
Yeah,
want
that's something that you could stress about way too much, and I just wouldn't worry about it. Like, at some point, somebody will take our contracts and give them to people, and I don't care. Like, if they want to do that, they probably still won't make
Well,
money.
I just wanna have integrity with you.
Yeah, and that's why I'm
saying
saying,
boundaries. I
yeah,
appreciate
you
that.
have permission. Don't just blast it out to the world. If it's going to benefit your business, try it out. If you mess it up, okay. And honestly, the biggest thing of those contracts is understanding how they work, not just having access to them. You're welcome to have access to them. You still won't be able to use it correctly.
Yeah, watermark.
It's more than just a piece of paper.
I
Right?
agree. So what was the phrase again? I will never make more money in a deal than,
Than you do.
there you go. I like that, I'm gonna put that at the top of the lead agreement.
Yeah. And you can even set it all.
That's the number one sentence at the top.
I'll add one more bar on top of that,
Copywriting, you
which
know.
again, this is
Make it obvious.
this is stepping back and thinking about, again, the situation that we're in. I added another layer to that, as I learned with you guys, which is not only will I never make more profit than you, but on the smaller deals, you will make significantly more than me. You will always make a minimum. So if you wanted to do that, if you guys wanted to copy that layer, then you could bring somebody in and say, look, I'll never make more than you, but I will always pay you a minimum of $500, $250, $1,000, whatever it might be, right? And that way, my number I just picked was 1,000 because to me, seeing 4 numbers come into your bank account instead of 3 just feels a lot more valuable. So I was like, we'll just do a minimum of 1,000. We raised our minimum double close fee so that we could do that, and now everybody makes a minimum of 1,000. Because a couple of you guys in here, when we were getting started, probably did deals with me where you made like $300 or something, and you know that's cool. It's not nothing, but I'd rather it be a little more significant. And so that makes it, yeah, cooler. Exactly. Makes it even better. So. Cool.
Thank you for explaining that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, referrals are a big one. Like I said, I'm pretty passionate about it. Does anybody have any other questions on just the nitty gritty of referrals? Who to focus on, how to talk to them, anything like that? Does anybody have any stories of referrals that they're getting that are going well? Anything like that?
Kind of back to the TC thing that you're going through, I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with one that brings deals in and helps structure seller carries, and then had a transactional funder that she was using for every deal, but he had some health issues, so she's looking for somebody new. But she's also a part of a wholesale team that's doing deals and looking for transaction funding as well. And we were talking about the different structures of the EMDs and the protections, and she was like, this is my procedure and SOPs, and then I was like, this is ours. And she's like, well, I kind of have like really good relationships with my title company, and I don't want to have like come to them and say, hey, I need you to sign this disbursement after I've done X amount of deals with them already. So I was curious in terms of like running into that scenario, like where is it just kind of like you look at both sets of documents and procedures and just be like, where do we meet in a happy medium so
Yeah.
everyone's happy, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, super simply. Whoever's money is being used on a transaction dictates how that transaction is run every time, no matter what, right? So you guys can submit anything through the white label. I will fund your deal for you. But as much as I want to help you understand the processes and things like that, I will not do something just because you ask or just because you really want it to close, right? We've had a few seller carry deals fall through recently, and that sucks. But it's because the money wasn't protected. It's not because, you know, we just thought, oh, let's just mess stuff up, right? And so if something comes in, think about, you know, the amount of time that Chelsea already spends on these deals. Imagine if instead of her following the process, you're like, let's just give her 12 new contracts that she can just read through and figure out if she still feels like we're protected. No, we did all this work for a reason, right? We're set up. Still not all there. And so that's the dictation. It's like, if she wants to use that, that's great. She can use it with her money. Or, and this is the thing that I feel like, again, a lot of you guys miss, you guys all have the ability with your money or with money that you bring in to do whatever you want. I don't tell you guys what to do. So when you have an end buyer come in that's has non-refundable EMD, fund it. Go for it. Like, I've done it and I've made a lot of money doing it. I've also lost a lot of money doing it. Nothing that I talk to about with you guys is because, you know, I find it more enjoyable to do less deals or to shut deals down or anything like that. I do it because I know what it feels like to lose the money and make the mistakes. And even if you don't lose money, have something linger. Like, I'm sure you don't have to raise your hands because I know there's people in here that have probably had long-term like private money loans go out, right? Where the deal falls apart and you don't know what's going on. And every day you wake up thinking about that crap. And that's why I stopped dabbling in that whole world, because you can't sometimes, at least I couldn't function all the time because of that stuff. And so it is basically impossible to explain that feeling and situation unless you're in it. And that's why I think some people probably sometimes get frustrated with like, well, Ryan's making us sign this freaking disbursement agreement, but it's because we've had deals where we didn't do that and they wouldn't give us the money back because we didn't do it. So that's why we do it. So that's the options. She can fund it herself and do whatever she wants. If you want to fund it or use somebody's money that's not mine, then you can come up with your own systems and processes. I will try to educate you as much as possible on why I do what I do, but you are free to do whatever you want. Or if you work with us, it has to be our way. And that's the same thing with any type of deal. There's no, oh, use this, or this is the way we do it. Cool, but you asked us to do it. So this is how we do it.
So in terms of if you were to come across that yourself, it would just be like, hey, I'm providing the capital. I want to make sure my stuff's protected. I've gone to attorneys to write this up. It's tried and true, so you just leave it at that. And if they decide to, hey, we'll work with you on that, great. If not, then you just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't change my systems for anything. And also, this might sound a little over the top, but I'd be willing to bet I've done more deals than that person. So I can say like, you know, this is based off data. This is real stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like some of the old contracts that I used to see people using, where they would use a personal guarantee on EMD with a broke wholesaler that was going to go bankrupt, which I've done, by the way. And guess what? You don't get money back from that. That's not how you get money. People told me they were, oh, you're safe with these contracts that have been written up by people that don't do deals. But then you actually do deals with them, and you're like, wait, why did I try to protect my money that way? So contracts not probably 90% of the time are just a placebo, where people are like, oh, I feel protected, right? But it's really 1% of the time where you have to test them out that most people just don't think about. But if you can get to that point and realize like, oh shoot, right? Like we had that call I posted where the stupid title company the other week just didn't give us our money back, right? And we were like, here's a contract you signed, we're gonna sue you and it's gonna really suck. And then they sent us the money back because we have that stuff. And we can show you that stuff. Like, hey, we've actually used this and it works. So that's the process there. I would never shut that stuff down. I would try to, as clearly as possible, explain why we do what we do. It's part of the thing I was talking about in the accelerator, right? I don't want to tell you what I do. I want to tell you why I do it. So if you can explain that, and usually, you know, this gets into like salesy stuff, but when I like to explain stuff like that, I'll just explain why I do it and then be like, does that sound fair, right? That I wouldn't want to lose my money and that this doesn't work and X, Y, Z. But also, you've got multiple options. So like if they're doing the seller carries, but you can't do the EMBs, cool, right? Maybe you could connect them with somebody else that goes a little more rogue on the EMD or that has the time. Because maybe their contracts work too, right? But we, as a process of doing a ton of deals, are not going to just change the entire process for, you know, this potential $73 in profit that's going to come through. So,
Hey, Ryan.
yeah.
since we're on contracts real quick. So one of the things I got blowback on when I was doing the read stuff is the lawyers freaked out about your contracts. And because they said addendum, and they said, no, this is an amendment because it's changing the contract rules as they were established. So the addendum would go with the purchase and sale before it's signed, where it would be an amendment after the fact because it actually changes the rules of the contract. And they're very specific about it.
Everybody is specific about their stuff in different ways. And so the reason why we follow the process we do is because no matter how much stuff you have, the only thing that matters is taking care, finding the person in charge and verify that person will follow that stuff, that will sign off on it. And if they will, you will always, no matter if we talk about contracts and all the stuff we have, like you are never 100% protected. Ever. That's why we charge money for what we do. That's why there's risk involved. That's why we educate ourselves. That's why you don't go put your last dime into something, right? Because there's always risk. So there is always a risk that somebody could freak out on whatever. But you know, the stuff we have now, it has been written by multiple lawyers, used many, many times for those reasons. And as long as we get that signature and everybody agrees, and we ask the questions that Chelsea asks them, then we have done what I would consider our due diligence in covering that. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have lots of questions.
Good.
So this might go more with when we do capital raising, but when you do lose money on a deal and you've said you've lost money, and if you're using capital partners,
how do you, I'm curious to know how that works. So how do you get that back to them? What are your agreements with them?
Come up with an upfront agreement, and if you're a decent person, then you probably have to pay them back in full. But also, I would highly recommend not using other people's money until you are very confident in what you're doing. And even then, I have lost money. So there's never guarantees.
I guess I will add something to that. And you have a offer in your company where like a percentage of all the profits that you're bringing.
If you're using a capital partner, that you put a fund just in case something goes
Yeah,
sideways.
I mean, you should never be on the last dime. That's what partnerships.
Yeah.
The first private capital that I raised, for the only time I've actually used it on a rental property, I kept that amount of money set aside. I didn't want to use my own money because I wanted to have it if I needed it, but I kept it set aside so that if I just was totally screwed, I could just pay them back.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that, and I'd like to learn more about what you're talking about and how to set that up. 'Cause that's
Yeah, I mean, just keeping money aside.
Yeah,
basically.
Well,
I
where do you
mean-
keep it, so it's not just sitting there doing nothing? I mean, do you have it like in a self-directed IRA? Do you have it in a infinite banking? You just
I
keep it
keep
in a-
capital accessible. I just keep it in an account.
Yeah.
Just in a regular bank account?
Well, my background is in construction, so every time I was doing budgets for renovation projects, and I had to do an agreement with the contractor, I always keep myself 20% buffer in case I have unexpected deals or expenses, and
Yeah.
that way you can hit your margins, right? So, because if you pay the full budget, what if something goes sideways? Then you're screwed, because then your margins go down, and then, you know how it is. But I guess you applies to these too, so, kind of similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I did the same thing as you. When you're using your own money and then you bring in somebody else's money, kind of keep money set aside
Yeah.
to make sure you can pay them off. But there is a scary point. If you choose to scale with other people's money, you hit a point where you're borrowing more money than you have money.
Yep.
And that's where I think your comment is really, really valuable. You need to be incredibly confident in what you're doing and have experience in it.
You need to be incredibly confident, and you still need to have some sort of an agreement, right?
Yeah.
So, you
Oh,
know,
always.
Paul has to understand if he gives me 50 grand that like the 50 grand can disappear, and we need to be on agreement on that, right? And I'm discussing with him ahead of time, and not just being like, oh, you know, that money disappeared, Ryan, but I assume you're gonna pay me back. And I'm like, ooh, Paul, I don't have any money. So there's so much more. The reason why we don't cover capital raising as much, and we will talk about it at some point more, I mean, we're already talking about it. The reason we don't cover it more is because people keep wanting to jump to capital raising, not understanding that in order for you guys to raise capital, you have to be able to run everything else in the transaction. I'm not running a transaction for you with random capital that's brought in by somebody else. I use the capital that I bring in that's brought to me and my business, right? Mason can't just bring $1 million and be like, here, and then tell his capital person, oh yeah, I just connected that money to some rando that you don't know. Like, that's not how that works, right? And so the reason, just to be clear, why we don't cover capital more is because most of us are still working on that confidence. And even though a lot of us might feel like we have the confidence to do it, what happens when something actually comes in? You don't, right? You don't have it to get all the way. You might feel like you got step 1, then step 2, then step 3, but if there's 35 steps, we have to get all of those steps. And somebody has to be able to trust you to be able to execute on those things. That is a huge responsibility. Using people's money is massive, right? And that's why it's a longer term thing, a bigger thing that we will all build up to. But you know, I could probably have somebody send me $5 million for a double closing and have us execute it because of the credibility, because of all the times that we've done it and stuff. But it would be, you know, wild if you just met somebody with $5 million and were like, dude, I do this thing, it's called double closing, like I'll make you a bunch of money, it'll be sick, right? Most people aren't gonna fall for that. Some might, if they really have the capital, or if they really trust you, right? If you have a lot of proof that you can do what you say you can do, but for the most part, not gonna happen. Okay, so let's go through referral strategy a little bit more.
On referral.
Yep.
Do you mind when you keep going through this, you touch on title companies specifically?
Yep.
How to engage with them?
Yep. Yeah, so let's just talk about overall lead gen strategy with referrals for you guys to maybe somewhat close this out. Does anyone know what time it is? 10:15 or 10:50? Got it. Okay, so let's try and wrap this in a minute and we'll try and jump to something else, but I know this is the main stuff that we're talking about. So when we're talking about lead generation strategy, I want to go back to the point I was making with you guys about the one-to-one versus the high leverage situations, right? So the people that we were talking about for high leverage, we've got TC, title company, realtors. Who else did I say? Gurus. That's a good one.
Would you
Okay.
put franchises in that list, or would you still leave them in the one-to-one?
I would put franchises almost less because franchise is going to be a lot harder to like narrow down on somebody that is willing and able to go outside of like the franchise's model for things. So like I would never reach out to what's that, like New Western. I would never be like, oh, New Western, you want to? They're like, oh, we've got a whole thing. Like we're not working with whoever you are. That's not how this works. Okay, so here's 4. There's probably more. Let's talk about it. So I contact all of these people. Not aggressively. I know this comes as a shock, but I still do lead generation too. We all run the same business. And when I'm doing my lead generation, I approach it from understanding what I'm looking for, and then I just operate in my day-to-day and keep an eye out for that stuff. This is just how I do it. It's a lot more passive because obviously I have other deals that we're already working on. But when I'm looking at this is the frame I want to give you guys for referrals that has been so powerful for me. If you see somebody post on Facebook, I'm closing a seller carry deal, right? And then you see them post on Facebook again 2 weeks later, I'm closing another seller carry deal. That person's closing seller carry deals. Now you can get in contact with that person, or first just research them, which is not that hard to do, but none of us ever do it, and look at how many of these deals are they doing, and then be curious. You could talk to them, you could talk to the people that they are in connection with, you could talk to mutual connections. Hey, I'm curious, how are they structuring these deals? Who's their lender on the deals? Are they using a coordinator? Are they using the same title company, right? If you come at any of these things from a curiosity standpoint, instead of this aggressive like salesman vibe that a lot of us tend to have, then you can get the answers without necessarily having to get them to pay you money or something like that. Personally, if I found a TC that was closing a bunch of deals, I would find a lot more value simply in knowing how are they funding those deals, rather than me being like, oh, you know that I fund deals, I'll fund the deals for you. I just want to know, how are they funding them? What is that going well? What are the rates that people are charging, right? You know, all of that stuff, that'll help me make my business better. It'll help me understand if there is a bottleneck. If they're like, oh, we're doing 50 a month, it's the easiest thing ever. I'm usually on the beach drinking margaritas, but like sometimes I have to check my computer. No problem, but cool. Sounds like you're living a great life. I probably should look at what you're doing and figure out how I can copy it, right? But if they're like, oh my gosh, the last 5 deals we've had X, Y, and Z, and this is going on, and you know, we can't. So the TCs that I spoke with last week were like, oh yeah, we've had like 20 different people come in to try and fund as transactional funders on these seller carry deals. None of them know what they're doing. They all call themselves these things that people call themselves and have no idea how to actually execute on the deal. And it's making us lose deals or have deals get significantly delayed and causing us a lot more work, right? That was literally how the conversation went, which obviously for me was like, ooh, this is great. But that's, you know, that was a conversation this week, or last week. It's a very normal conversation that can be had in that realm. So when I'm talking to these people, same thing with gurus. I do this on school more often because I find it easier. All the time, and I know some of you guys have done this too, I'll just type in real estate or pay attention to people in the real estate space. I'll follow them on school, I'll shoot them a message, or I'll try and work my way up their ladder and shoot other people a message, right? So Fund Freedom small, obviously you guys all talk to me on a day-to-day basis, but if Fund Freedom had 50,000 people in it, then reaching out to me would be pretty stupid, right? But what if you reached out to Jamie, who you know is pretty connected with me, and you talk to Jamie about what I'm doing, and he can relay that information, and you can potentially work your way up if you have a problem to be solved. So I love doing this stuff with gurus. I have a couple meetings coming up with people in the commercial space that run commercial mentorship program things, whatever. And again, curiosity. Same thing with land flipping. I'm super curious with the land people right now with all these double closes. And I've both been doing, and I've been having, asking referrals to go do this for me, is just go be curious. Do you guys double close every deal? How many double closing, like what's your percentage? What do you usually use for the double close? What's the typical size of the deal? What's the typical amount of money they're charging? And if I find out that they double close on every deal and are being charged 5%, then I'm like, oh my gosh, we have an amazing opportunity. And if I find out that they're double closing on every deal, but they're tiny and they use their own money most of the time, well then there's not as much of a need as I thought. Maybe I need to look somewhere else or find a different niche group, right? You could find 5 million wholesale real estate groups, and every one of them probably has a slightly different angle on what they do, right? A different list that they're pulling, a different approach that they're using, whatever it might be. And so that's my approach with gurus. That's my approach with TCs. Realtors, I don't do as much. Jamie's done some referrals with realtors, I think, and it's mostly just conversations with them about what he does and what he's looking for and what it'll look like. So that one's not super strategic, I don't think, outside of just general stuff. Title company stuff, so I'll tell you what I do. I'll have Tasso tell you what he told me last night about what he's doing. I'm sure other people in here have done different things. I have tried, and Chelsea and I are working on trying to do more of after we execute, which is how I like to do everything. By the way, that's what I did with these TCs that we now have bringing us a ton of deals. I executed on 5 deals with them in 1 month, not with them though, with their borrowers. And they were like, yo, whoever this dude is, like, we should set up a call with him because he's closing all these deals and it's like no effort at all. It seems like he does a lot of this. So that's how we got connected. With title companies, my approach is we close the deal and then I'll reach back out to them or have Chelsea reach out to them because they like Chelsea. She's talked to them. She's like, hey, remember how we just did that thing that was like really, really easy for you guys and it was awesome? Do you have any more stuff like that? Or can we talk more about that? Or again, I like to take curiosity approach. So I would say something like, do you guys double close a lot or is that pretty rare? Like, was this a normal thing? Oh yeah, no, we do that all the time. Cool, I would love to talk to you more about that. And what? When you're working with referrals, what are you trying to do? Give them value, right? So think about the person, think about what they want. Title companies, they want more deals, right? They make money on every deal that comes into them. So you'd be like, oh, you know what? I just saw that you did that double close. You know, I don't have a lot of title companies, whether this is true or not, I don't have a lot of title companies that are really good at that stuff. I would love to send you guys some more deals. Can we get on a call to talk about how you guys are structuring these, what your processes are? Boom, easy, right? Not, hey, I'd really love to fund all of your deals. Can you guys pay me to do that? That would be awesome. They're like, who is this? Why, right? And you can stack stuff too. So you could do this cold and just say, I would love to bring you deals, and they have no idea who you are. Or you can execute, have proof and credibility, and double trouble that with, hey, I want to bring you more deals. And they're like, dude, this person is great. I would love to get on a call with them. And then you can at least deep dive a little further. That's the way I've done it and the way I like to do it. Tasso's doing some cold outreach. You want to talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, just project, or you can go back to the seat.
Yeah, so I started recently going to in-person events, like I was telling you, but that's the way that I like it. You know, coming from the commercial real estate space, it's like everybody's in person, right? So, what I'm doing is, I'm setting up meetings with title companies in Florida to have, like a lunch and learn. And they're seem pretty open to the idea of having somebody fund the deals, right? Because like he was saying, it's like, they want more closings and they want some more transactions. Meanwhile, their clients are having issues with capital, and that's where I come in, right? So every time I have that approach, they're like, yeah, let's set up something. So it's working good. I mean, I'm just getting traction right now, but that's the path.
Yeah, we talk about, go back to the funnel here. So I like to think of that approach and how I've done this for a long time
One-to-many, right?
with the funnel. It's not just that it's one-to-many. It's that you can say, do you need a seller carryback funded? You could say, do you need an escrow protected deal funded? Do you need anything funded? I have money, right? You can go as wide as you want with this stuff. And so with what he's saying, or an approach that you can take, and this is like a higher waste of time, but still more things coming into the bucket, is just like going up to every real estate investor and be like, I have money to fund your deals, right? And if you do that, you will always have conversations to be had. The vast majority of those conversations will not be deals that you'll be funding, right? But you can fill the top. That gives you more access to people. And guess what? You may not want to fund that deal for them, but they probably do other deals too, or they know somebody who does, or whatever it might be. And so you can bring more people in. If people need money, that means that they're doing stuff, literally. That's it. They need money because they are actively investing. What is our goal? To find active investors, right? Especially over these theory conversations like we talked about with people that are like, yeah, I'm looking to get into wholesaling, right? It's like, okay, cool, come back to me when you figure it out, right? Because I'm not here to teach you wholesaling. But if you find people that are active, you can start filling the top of that funnel, bringing people down, and it may only be 1 out of every 100 people. But if you can fill that up more, you're gonna have more contacts who then, get this, can connect with their contacts if you do a good job. Oh yeah, I don't need that kind of funding, but that one person, if they're not in the same freaking pond as everybody else, that one person knows 1,000 other people or 50 other people or whatever it might be that are also in the real estate space, and so does this one, and so does this one, and the more spaces you can go to fill that top of funnel and then get those people to reach out with incentives and clarity, the crazier this funnel can get. And it all starts with widespread up top. So that's another great option. Yeah.
Speaking of like getting out of the pond, I think another way that's been effective as far as, for my property management business, so I'm involved in like the local chamber of commerce, local B&I groups. Well, on top of that, I mean, you can do that with even your W-2, get involved in these groups, and then when you're having one-to-one conversations with them, you bring up this other area where you can provide value. It seems like I'm starting to get some traction with that, but it's just a way to get outside of that pond. I think that's overlooked.
And another thing I'll add that I could talk about forever in my world of opinions is when we're talking about all the getting outside of the pond and getting out to all these people, there are things, it's true for me as well, it's true for probably most of you guys, there are things that you have been indoctrinated to believe that may or may not be actually true. That's a very vague statement, but when we're talking about real estate in general, you could think there's only one way to do something, and then you could go to another group and they're like, that is the dumbest way to do that, right? And you're like, wait, but this other guy said it was the best way. And it doesn't mean this person's right, and it doesn't mean that this person's right. But you now understand, oh wait, okay, there is multiple ways to do that. And then there's a third way, and then there's a fourth way. And then what you have to do, and this is incredibly difficult to figure out, this is like one of my life missions, you have to figure out which of those people are actually credible. And then you have to, once you figure out which ones are actually credible, you have to figure out which ones are actually credible. Because you think people are credible based on what you see online or based on whatever it may be, or, and here's a kicker, based on what they're doing now. But if they don't have the longevity behind what they're talking about, in my opinion, they still are not credible or they're not fully credible, right? So here's a very relevant example right now. You could find somebody that's buying 10 co-living properties a month, right? And this is an analogy to a situation that I dealt with in the past that some other people might have been involved with. But this is very real now. Somebody's buying 10 co-living properties a month, and they've been doing it for 3 months, and you're like, that person is a co-living expert. They bought 30 co-living properties. They've got everything going. It's amazing. But that person hasn't dealt with vacancies. They haven't even finished the properties yet. They haven't owned them long enough to see if any laws are going to change. They haven't, X, Y, Z all the way down the line. Then guess what? Those people, which there was a vast group of people I was connected with when I started in real estate that are not now all broke and out of real estate because they followed these strategies, became the experts in those strategies that were garbage strategies, and now they have no money, right? And so it's very hard when you are trying to find the people that are credible to listen to on, wait, should I follow this strategy or that strategy? This is something I can't really teach. I can just implore you all, I don't want to say this, but like assume the worst and figure out what's the worst case scenario, right? Another very, very relevant thing that I was going to bring up at some point today, so I'll bring it up now, is when you guys work with me or you work with somebody else, naturally, and this is not your fault, it's just how it works, naturally you are thinking, is there any way I can get this deal done so that I can make money, right? I am sitting behind my computer thinking, is there anything possible that can go wrong, right? We're thinking two completely different ways. And so when we have a seller carry deal that's not being done, but there's a good chance it's going to make it through, it would be natural for you to think, but there's a really good chance that this isn't going to go wrong. And I think about the fact that what if it does and I send $500,000 somewhere and it doesn't come back, right? My life will be destroyed. Your life will probably just be destroyed. Everything will fall apart, right? And guess what? A lot of the times with those deals, it's for a profit of like $3,000, right? You can have your $3,000. I'll take my sanity for the next 50 years. So being able to think from that perspective on like, what's the down the road, right? Remember when people were buying Airbnb arbitrage? And it was like, maybe some of you guys did it and maybe it's still working. I don't know. But I know a lot of people that are not in a good spot right now because they went out and bought all this freaking furniture for houses they didn't own or have control over. Now they can't get rid of the furniture. They've got those stupid credit cards for the furniture that was like 0% interest when they got it, and now it's not. And it's all because they were just thinking like, well, if I do this now, the next month I'll make $3,000 in cash flow, which is not a real thing, and go down that path, right? And then they face reality. And so if you can think longer term, it will make your shorter term seem slower. That's because you're doing it correctly. The people that go really fast are not usually the ones that continue on. So just a perspective shift there. Okay, I know we could do lead generation forever, but I want to at least give touches on other things. Do you guys feel like you have at least a better idea of maybe something you could be doing different now that would be more effective for lead generation?
Yep.
Cool. Everything we talk about today is partly to educate and partly to spin your mind so that later today and for the next forever, you guys can be like, hey, this sparked X, Y, Z. Here's some more questions I have. Then we can do more trainings on that. We can bring in more experts on that or whatever. So don't think that this is the end of lead generation. Your life will consist of lead generation forever. But hopefully this can at least jog your thoughts a little bit. I'm like, hey, we could do more of this. You could be more detailed on that, whatever it might be. Cool? Sweet.